Hello everyone, welcome to Life in All Its Beauty. This is a channel where I show tutorials of crochet and machine knitting and talk about them as well as the markets and craft fairs that I do. So today I'm doing a tutorial on a machine knit headband. I don't have one finished right now to show you, but it's a headband with a bow type front, and my kitties decided to join us. And so the materials you'll need for this are yarn that works in your machine. This I believe is Loops and Threads Impeccable, if I'm remembering correctly. I've long since lost the tag, but it is a yarn that I know works in my knitting machine. And then I will also be using a stitch counter. This is optional. Feel free to just count along in your head. I've done it plenty, or count as you go. Ma'am? We can't be attacking the stitch counter. And then I also find you'll need a sewing needle, a crochet hook, and scissors or snippers of some sort. Hi guys, I'm gonna pop in here real quick. I forgot to mention that you also need a 40-pin knitting machine. In order to make this, I have a 40-pin Sentro knitting machine. If you would like to make a headband that's a little bit thinner, you can also use the 20-pin. If you're going to make for a baby or a small child, I recommend using a 20-pin. Otherwise, the 40-pin makes a really nice width. So I've got this one here as an example. For this pattern, you do not need waste yarn. So there's two different ways of casting on and casting off. One includes waste yarn that you use and then you take off at the end, and you can either keep reusing it or throw it away or use it for a different project. Or you can just go with the color you're starting with and do that. So we will not be using waste yarn for this pattern, which I like because I always forget to put my waste yarn on. I'm just too excited to cast on my project. So let's get into it. Alrighty. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your yarn and you are going to thread it. To thread it, we're going to spin this until you find the black hook, or whatever your starting hook is if you have a different machine. You're going to put it underneath. We're going to drop the tail. And I'm going to end up holding it tight for these first few. Then you're going to go behind the next one. We're going to crank a few stitches. So you can see the green yarn loose in here, and it is now trapped under the black hook. Goes behind the first white hook, in front of, and behind. And we're going to repeat this all the way around. So you can see I'm alternating going in front and behind. In front, behind. All the way around. All right. And so now you can see I've gone in front, behind, and now I'm set to go in front of this black hook again. This is where I'm going to stop going in front of and behind. So this is how you cast on. You go in front of, behind, alternating. You should come out with the yarn going in front of the black hook. If it does not, that means that somewhere you messed up. You just take it out and try it again. So now we're going to put the yarn through the feeder and into the tension rings here. We want to maintain even tension on this so that it comes out with nice even stitches and you don't drop any or have any tucked stitches or anything like that. And I find that this machine prefers if I double tension it. So I'm going to go down through the first one, up through the second one. I'll test it a few. If I find it's too tight, I will adjust. Then you're going to want to make sure that you pull out enough yarn that you can do some knitting for a bit, for a few rounds, so that it's not pulling out of the skein. And then we're going to start cranking. I'm going to get my stitch counter ready. I like to hold it and I hold the machine at the same time. So as I'm going, I will actually click it to keep count of my rows. Whoop. All right, so that is 1 row. Make sure my yarn is loose here. I'm actually going to move this to the other side. I think it just works a little bit better for what my setup is right now. And I'm going to do round 2. And round 3. So you can see I'm starting a new round every time this black hook comes up. So I have now finished 3 rows. Make sure you can see that. And I'm going to continue doing this, just cranking all the way around, making sure that it stays loose enough over on this side yarn so that I'm maintaining a good tension. And I will do this until I reach the length that I want. Alrighty, so I'm at 20 rows here. This is about what it looks like. And it's coming out fantastic. So what I ended up doing, I played with the tension a little bit. I actually ended up restarting because the tension was all over the place. And I ended up just putting it into the first small loop for this one. And I found that that's what works for me. So when you're trying a new yarn, it's been a while since I've used this yarn. It's okay if it takes you some time to figure out the tension. If you have to undo, redo, it's no big deal. It just takes some trial and error, especially because these machines, the Sentro is the one that I have experience with. I found that they can be a little particular sometimes. So I'm going to keep going until I reach about 75 rows. Alright, this is a good teaching moment too. I have a big old knot here, and this happens to me all the time because I don't really pay attention to the yarn as it comes up. And sometimes it gets tangled. It'll catch in your tension hook and pull it up. And so you just take it out. Sometimes you need to backtrack just the slightest bit. You don't want to do too much, just enough to be able to let you take it off. If it's too tight, sometimes it's very difficult to take off. So, slightest bit, and you'll just take it off, refeed, make sure there's no knots, and continue on. All right, so this is starting to drag on the table below. I did pull it down. I like to pull it down just because, I don't know, it's fun. But it was starting to drag on the table. So I need to pull it up and fold it over. So, because otherwise it'll drag on the table and it can mess with what's going on up here, causing you to drop stitches or have tuck stitches or just other issues. All right, so I'm at 75 or around there, give or take. I will say it's okay if you forget to count a row. It's okay if you accidentally add an extra row or you don't add enough rows, you're 1 or 2 short. It's no big deal. These patterns are very forgiving of that. You obviously don't want to be missing a significant chunk, but if it's just 1, 2, even 3 rows, that's okay. Don't worry about that too much. So here is what we have. And now we're going to cast off. Now, oftentimes what people will do is, I think they will crank around once and then they'll use the sewing needle to hook it off the machine. You can do that if you prefer. I never got the hang of it. I was always dropping it. It was a big mess. So here's what I do. I start off by taking this off. I will hold this out of the way and I crank around 1 time. Getting stuck over here. All right. And you can see here, now it's starting to come off. So I'm going to crank around 1 more time and this will knock the entire thing off. Alrighty. Looks like there we go. Never mind. And say it looks like we had some that were stuck. In which case you just go around, keep cranking until you reach there and make sure it actually comes off. But it's okay, it came off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut off about maybe 1 to 2 feet of yarn. Just depends on how much you'd prefer extra to have. I don't want too much extra. Keep in mind you will be wrapping the yarn tail around where you're cinching this up so that it stays on. But so you do need some extra so that you can do that. But you don't need tons extra. So I'm going to chop that off there. So this is what I ended up cutting off. Next, I'm going to get my needle. And now you might be asking what that crochet hook that I told you at the beginning is for. This is for accidents. Don't really need this. You can make do without. I find if you have stitches slipping off in this step, the crochet hook makes it way easier. So we're going to start sewing through each of these holes. The loops, the live stitches is I believe the technical term, and we will go around and catch them all so that it doesn't completely unravel on us. All right, and like I said, it's quite possible that it'll start to unravel. It's not a big deal. Like I said, you just use the crochet hook, and if I have any, which I most likely will, I will show you how you would save them. But for these, I'm just being very careful to not pull on it too much so that the stitches don't drop down. And this stitch is being a little bit trickier. Sometimes the yarn will start to split and it's hard to tell where exactly the center of the loop is. In that case, just make your best guess. Go through where you think the best is. If you realize that you're missing a bit, you can go get it. Otherwise, it's not going to be a huge deal. As long as you get most of it correct, then your stitch will be secured. And that is our big thing here right now, is making sure that this is entirely secured. And I will note, this part you will not see. This will be covered up. Alrighty, so I've gotten to almost the last stitch. There's one right here. You can see this one's coming apart, and I can show you how to fix this. So I will pull it down a few so that it's a little bit easier to see. So you can see right here, this is coming apart. This is not what we want. This is still a live stitch, and it's able to unravel all the way down if we let it. So this is where you take your crochet hook, and I'm on the outside of the work, you can see. And if you look here, you can see that this right here and this right here, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but the loop is coming out from the back to the outside, from the inside to the outside. So we're going to do that with these lines or rows here as well. So I'm going to pull this from the back, from the inside to the outside. And again, I'm going to pull this from the inside to the outside. From the inside, ooh, it's coming off my hook, to the outside. And one last time from the inside to the outside. And so here you can see it's all stitched right back up. And it looks just about the same as the others. So I'm going to put my needle through this last stitch to secure it. And then through the stitch that I began with. This is the only stitch that I run through it twice. You don't have to. I just find it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier if I do that. And so here we go. It is all safe. All of my stitches are caught. And now, this is the fun part. I'm going to give this a good few stretches first. That way, any uneven stitches are kind of evened out. Everything looks a little bit better. And then I'm going to take my loose end, pull it tight. We're going to cinch it up. I'm not going to tie it off yet. We'll repeat this on the other end. All right. So this is what we're left with. The next step, we are going to sew these together like so. So this is the part where I'll tie it off. So I'll make sure that these both are nice and tight, and I will tie them together. You can see just the way that this is, they're in the same spot, which they should be, because when you make it, you're starting and ending at the same spot. I'm actually going to change where the halfway line is so that these are more on the bottom. There we go. And now I will tie these together. At this point, it will look a little loose, a little wonky. That's okay. We're going to take our sewing needle now, and we are going to sew these together. So that square knot that we did is going to keep these cinched up. And then the sewing will keep them together. So I'm going to make sure that I like that. Okay. So now you can choose to use either both or just one of the pieces of yarn, your loose pieces of yarn here. I'm just going to use my long one, and I'm going to stab through, making sure I hit both sides of the cinch on this side and both sides here. I'm going to put that out of my way. All right. All right, and you can see I'm getting both sides here. Pulling that down and then coming back up. Hit both sides here. And again down, get both sides. And up, get both sides. You don't want to do this too far from the edge. So you want it to be pretty close to the edge, because otherwise it can get kind of funky looking. It'll scrunch it up and be really thick and bulky, and we don't particularly want that. Alrighty. Where's my end? Here's the end, okay. Once you get all the way down and it's looking something like this, then I'm going to, just for better security, do just some quick zigzag stitches right back the way I came, so that I'm starting where that I'm ending where I started. All right. So this is what it looks like once you're done sewing. You could leave it here, but I think it looks a little bit messy. So I'm going to, again, tie these off. And I'm going to get both of my pieces. And now I'm just going to begin wrapping the yarn around them until I think it looks good. Obviously I have one piece that's longer than the other. So at some point I will run out of my short piece, and that's fine. I will tie it off, put it to the inside, and then I will finish up wrapping with my long piece. So we're going to tie off the short piece right now. I'm going to use my crochet hook for this. I think it'll make it just a little bit easier. So I'm just pulling this through to make a little loop. So if you can see, I've got a loop here, and this is the same piece of yarn passed underneath. And then I'm just going to go underneath, pull that tight, and I'm going to go again through this loop, pull it tight, and that is a very secure knot. That is not going to come out, especially since I'll be wrapping over it. So at this point, I'm going to I'll just leave this loose piece for now, and I'm going to just keep wrapping. All right, now I'm getting to the end of this piece, so I will be putting this piece in as well. So again, I'm going to actually go under here, and I'm going to repeat the same process. Pull this through. I'm going to pass my yarn underneath, and then I'm going to pull it so that I have one loop, pass it underneath. For this one, I'm just going to do it twice for good measure. There we go. Pull it nice and tight. And now I'm going to pull it underneath with my sewing needle. So I'm going to stab through everything that we just wrapped and sewed. Maybe if I can get it. There we go. So you can see my sewing needle here poking out. I'm actually going to hide this a little further down. So because this is a tube, you can separate it, and then going through just a single layer, we'll pull this through way down here. Then I will put both of my ends on, or through the sewing needle. It's a little frayed, I'm just going to snip the end. There we go. So I've got both ends here now, and I'm just going to pull them through. And you can see here they come. I'm going to grab, and I'm going to pull tight to make sure I can get those knots underneath the wrapping. That way they are hidden, and they'll actually be safer that way as well. So now I've got the ends poking through here. All I do is I just pull this tight. The ends disappear inside the tube, and we're done. So as you can tell, it's an easy peasy headband. It can be done fairly quickly once you get the hang of cranking out. And it looks super cute. All right, so now you can see the finished product and how you would wear the headband. I tend to like to wear it with a ponytail or a bun. It's just my preference, but keep in mind, these do stretch. So I did 75 rows for this one. I have a small head as well. So if you have a larger adult head, maybe go 80 rows. If you're making this for a teenager, like a younger teenager, preteen, 70 to 75 rows, depending on how big the preteen or teen is. And for a child, you know, fewer rows, maybe 65, but then at that point, this starts getting a little bit wide. So I hope you enjoyed making the project. Experiment with different yarns. Different yarns will stretch differently, will have different sizes. This is a thicker yarn than I've made it before. My favorite headband that I've made, I made with a slightly thinner, and I love it. It's so warm, and I expect that this one will be even warmer. I live in Minnesota, so it makes a big difference in the winter, and I've already started using it, you know, almost every single day to keep my head warm as I'm going into work. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial and have a wonderful day. Bye!